Hi, I'm Luke Hector for the Broken Meeple, and when you're done with this video, please remember to leave a thumbs up and a comment. It means the world to me to know that you appreciate the content and the effort that goes into it. So yeah, we're continuing on with the top 100. Whew, 2 down, at least 8 to go. It's a mammoth undertaking this, but it's good fun. So on this list, we've only got one debut on this list. The rest of them you've seen before, but there's been some change around in the rankings, certainly. I think the bottom 30 games on my list definitely do seem to be a case of, oh, it's this slot brought down a peg, but you need to hear why they've been brought down a peg, which is the whole point. So without further ado, let's get on with it.
Get on with it.
My number 80 has actually climbed 5 places, so it's managed to leave the last bracket and go into this bracket. It's from Andreas Seyfarth at Layer Games, and this is San Juan 2nd Edition. A lot of people go mad over Puerto Rico and Race for the Galaxy. Now, Race for the Galaxy is fine, just how much iconography and confusing rules do you want to learn? Puerto Rico is too much of a Puerto Rico shark thing. You know, it's like, oh, we'd like to sit down and play Puerto Rico. Now, you can't sit next to me. Why? You're new. You'll mess up the game. No, no, no. I must have the most perfect game ever, and I cannot possibly have some young whippersnapper newbie player sit next to me. It's like, come on. The mentality that goes into Puerto Rico like players is like ridiculous sometimes. San Juan, though, is the one I go for. It's a simple card game. Very straightforward. The deck of cards is everything. Your resources, your buildings, your money, and you've got the simple premise of take a roll, and then you do that action, get a bonus, and then everybody else gets to follow the action. So it's all about timing of when you can do the action more than the opponent. But the crux of the game is build buildings with special abilities, get some good resource cards underneath your buildings, trade them for more cards, which you then use to buy more buildings. Very simple. Get 12 buildings, end the game. It's a straightforward, simple, almost casual card game. You know, gateway level almost, maybe the next step above. But I enjoy this one. I find myself putting this in my game bag a lot because it can handle up to 4 players fine. It's quick and easy to learn and quick and easy to play, and it's like, yeah, it's a pretty solid game. Why do I want to play the big version when I can play the small version in a much quicker time? Yes, I wish maybe the artwork was a bit better, and yes, the box is probably is way too big for what it is. I mean, it is just a box of air. But yeah, I'd love to see more building cards come out for this, or a revised sort of pocket version of the game. It's really solid. San Juan actually climbing places as opposed to a lot of the other ones I've mentioned, which have all basically dropped. It's nice to see one that's rising up a little bit. San Juan 2nd Edition. And as I just talk about ones that are rising up the list, well, why don't we talk about one that's dropped 33 places on the list? Yeah, this one doesn't come out anywhere near as often as it used to, and it's actually downstairs now because it's where all my big box games are kind of stored now, and that is Rising Sun from Eric Lang and Cool Mini or Not. And I believe, if I'm right, this is the only Cool Mini or Not game I own, because I'm kind of getting sick and tired of the whole like, we got a new game, right? Give us $300. It's like, excuse me? It's like, yeah, there's a limit on how much I need to spend on a game now. And this is the last one I spent that kind of ridiculous, well, actually, tell a lie. Awakened Realms might have stolen a lot of money off me for the entirety of Nemesis, but then I went all in, and that's including another game I've yet to receive. This was something like, you know, $300 just to get Rising Sun with some expansion material, which was basically just base set material that they took out of the box. We all know this is the practice these days. But the game, much as I rag on the Kickstarter practices, the game is great. The game is essentially what Blood Rage should have been, because I'm not that particularly big on Blood Rage, but Rising Sun, with that kind of fantastical Japanese feudal Japan look, the beautiful board, straight up area control, get your characters, get your samurai soldiers, get your giant monsters and go at it. You've got to be aggressive, you can't turtle in this game, at least not effectively, and I love that the rules are fairly simple and streamlined, but there's a lot of decisions to make. Like, where am I going to go? Who should I attack? Who should I ally with each turn? Shall I betray said ally? The timing of those little tablet action tiles that you pull out. You know, let's see, if I do this, this is the last recruit, which means you can't get any more after this, which means I can move later. It's like, ooh, and then the god powers and all that stuff. There's a lot of cool stuff going on. It looks absolutely gorgeous. Main reason it's dropped, it's just because it doesn't come out as often because of how big the game is, you know, with all the miniatures and all that, you've got to get out of the box. I played this last week though at KCON and reminded myself of why I love it so much. It's a really solid game. We had a really fun free player with a new player. Granted, I might have broken the game a little bit because they kind of let me get away with murder with buying all the various cards cheap because I was playing the cheap clan, the one who gets everything for cheap, and I just ended up with card after card after card after card. It's like, oh, I'll take blue cards and green cards, red cards, and all these monsters, and that's addictive in itself. Just being able to go, what do I fancy buying? I want a big giant monster. That's what it is.
Big monster!
So yeah, I didn't much like Blood Rage, and I couldn't give one iota about Ankh. It's like, how many of these like big miniature games with area control do I really need? And that merge rule does sound abysmal as a game design point, but I'm sticking with Rising Sun, for me, at my 79. Number 78 has actually fallen further than the previous one, actually 41 places from 37, and I think this is because I'm starting to wane a little bit on social deduction games. There are some exceptions, which we'll get onto those a bit later, but yeah, I'm finding them a little bit samey. You know, especially ones like, I don't want to play games like The Resistance or Secret Hitler or anything like that, and to be fair, I'm not a big fan of Secret Hitler anyway, but they're very predictable. The meta has now got to the point where every time you play one of those games, the first 2 or 3 rounds plays out exactly the same. No matter who's playing the game, always the same. That puts me off. But this one, Deception, Murder in Hong Kong, is still a really good fun social deduction game because it's combined with that kind of Mysterium-esque deduction part. It's not just simply, right, I'm the bad guy and I'm trying to bluff my way out of this. Yeah, 1, maybe 2 people are trying to bluff their way out of being the bad people, but the rest of them are trying to figure out this deduction puzzle. The forensic scientist has to give clues, like, you know, what type of evidence was at the scene, and what did the victim look like, and where was it, that kind of thing. And the idea is that all the investigators are basically trying to look at all these cards in front of people with various bits of evidence and weapons on there, trying to go, well, he said there was no blood, so it can't be a gunshot. It certainly can't be a stab wound either. Maybe it was electrocution. You're hanging on to that. I'm looking at you, I'm watching you. It's like, as everyone's poking the finger and trying to get at each other's throat, practically, in a fun way. But, you know, everyone's launching accusations, and I've never heard so many creative ways you can kill somebody aside of this game, when people are trying to come up with every excuse possible to nail somebody as the murderer. It's like, it's totally you, because I'm pretty certain if I had a ping pong ball, I'd be able to do. It's like, what? It's like, seriously? What kind of serial killer are you?
You're sick!
It's really good fun, simple to teach. The expansion adds some more stuff if you want to make it a bit more meaty. It does require a lot of players, though. That's the thing. This is like a minimum 6-player game, and preferably more if you can find it. But it's just still a really good, solid, fun game, because it's not just social deduction, it's a bit of normal deduction as well, and some decent banter, and just like a more interesting premise than just simply, right, there's 6 of us here, go on a mission, yes or no. It's like, that's kind of boring now, that's dated. You know, I feel like The Resistance is dated. This, however, I'd still fancy playing, just nowhere near as much as, say, in previous years. My number 77 is pretty consistent. After dropping from 72, it's still in this bracket. I mentioned about a bunch of games that I've got in these giant wooden crates there. I mean, like, take like this one, for example. You know, Ticket to Ride is all in there. How often do I bring this crate out? Not often, but at least I have all the Ticket to Rides. It is a problem. It's a double-edged sword. I've got the even bigger crates in the other room that you might have noticed, and this one contains the entirety of Eldritch Horror. A lot of stuff for this game. I mean, I've got, I think, every expansion for this, so all the bits are in there, and if I want to set it up, I can separate it all fine, but it does involve getting this giant crate off the shelf onto the table and trying to figure out, oh, what piece goes with what here. I did probably go a bit mad on bloating this out, but it's a good, fun Arkham Horror style game. It's a Indiana Jones style map on the board, a world map, as you're going from country to country, encountering all the different creatures and the various cool Arkham Horror lore, while trying to get the clues and various mission objectives to defeat a respective ancient one. But there's so much variety in this game now that I can just pick a different ancient one, and with some different characters and different settings, and even tweak it up with some special like starter cards that I forget what they're called. They're like story cards. They add a little narrative, and I can really change up the game for the better. But the rules aren't too complex. You basically do a couple of actions and that's it. And then you do the Mythos cards. You look at the encounters. Are you going into the portals? Are you going to go to an archaeological dig site? There's a lot of good variety and story that comes from this game, even though I would say this one isn't quite as horrific as the other Arkham Horror games. There's more horror in, say, Arkham Horror LCG than there is in this one. This feels like more an Indiana Jones adventure game with some Arkham Horror added, if that makes sense. But great fun. I played it a few months ago because somebody I knew wanted to learn the game, so I invited 3 others around here, got it all out. We had one big game. I think I combined it with the Mountains of Madness board, so we were fighting the I think we were fighting the Ice Demon. I forget what his name is. I can't remember the names of all these guys, but you know, I want to fight Ice Demon one week. I want to fight Planet Destroying Azathoth the next week. I want to fight Cthulhu another week. Or maybe I just want this giant worm tentacle thing that destroys cities. You know, there's all sorts of variety I can do. Still love the game. It's pretty consistent, mainly just because if I could bring it out easier, it would be higher. And there's a lot to be said about games that take a while to set up and take down, but still enjoyable. Eldritch Horror. So let's move away from social deduction and Amerithrash and stuff like that. Let's go on to a big, deep, heavy Euro game, okay? Big, deep, and heavy, although people are probably going to have my head for the fact that this is low on the list compared to what they do. It's only dropped 3 places, that's all, but still, it's only been in my 70s, and that's A Feast for Odin. A Feast for Odin is a great Euro game. But I tend to only want to play it solo because teaching it with more players, yes, there's tightness for the spaces on the board, but other than that, the interaction is kind of neither here or there. Really, I like Feast for Odin because of the wealth of options I have for Path of Victory, as well as all the different actions I can do, and the cool, well, I say cool, the fun Tetris, like polyomino style thing, even though thematically it makes no sense whatsoever. I enjoy the mechanics of this game. I don't enjoy teaching it. Teaching it is an absolute bugbear with all those actions. And I certainly do not like playing this with 4 players ever. I mean, even 3 players, I'll be like, are we gonna be here 3? You know, I'm a little bit concerned. 2 player though, this works pretty fine, and solo, it's a great solo mode. You basically just play against a fairly standard AI opponent who blocks spaces. Great, but at least I get to decide, right, I'm gonna go for sheds, or I'm gonna emigrate, and I'm gonna get lots of, like, you know, reward tokens. I'm going to go whaling, I'm going to go fishing, I'm going to go raise pigs and cows and horses. And granted, this is with the expansion, the Norwegian's expansion, because if it didn't have that expansion, I think this would probably fall off my top 100. It really needs that expansion to add the extra bit of variety. Not that the base game had no variety, but hey, extra variety is good. But to differentiate its starting setups and also to balance the board. You know, the new balance board is so much better than the original, particularly when it comes to animals. You tell me if you've ever won the animal strategy using only the base game. I double dare you, but you know, at least it's doable in the second one. So I still really enjoy it. It's a big Euro. I think it's in the other room. I have not played it in a while because it is a bit of a setup, you know, insanity, but it's still good fun, even if thematically it doesn't make one lick of sense whatsoever. But still solid Feast of Odin. Now this one's interesting because this one's actually risen 8 places, but I can't remember the last time I played it. It's a while ago since I played it, but I hear there's a very good online app for it now, which is going to get me more interested. It's in a case in the other room as well, although it's a bit easier to bring it out of this case because I've only got about, what, 3 expansions for it? Even though there's like a gazillion of them, I thought 3 was enough, and that's for Dominion. I love deck builders. Deck builders are great. Deck builders are so much fun. I mean, I look behind me, I can see Dale of Merchants, I can see Runestones, I can technically see Viscounts. Do you call that a deck builder? Probably not. But yeah, the Dominion's in the other room. Star Realms, I think, is downstairs now. There's a lot of deck builders I've got. I love the genre. Dominion was the original. You want to know where it started from, like where it really started from, you go for Dominion. And it's still a great game. Whether you use the basic 10 factions, although 10 locations, maybe not as much, but I've got expansions. So you basically just go, right, well, you know what, I'm just going to pick these 10. Boom, brand new game. Next game, choose 10. Brand new game, and the variety is just endless with this. You can go nuts and buy every single expansion. I don't think you need to. I personally like Seaside, Prosperity, Guilds, and Hinterlands. I think they're the ones that I have in my box. I think I've got Prosperity, I'm not sure, but I've definitely got Seaside, Hinterlands, and Guilds. But I'm pretty certain I've got Prosperity as well. They're definitely the expansions I recommend. You want to get any additional ones on top of that? fine, but honestly, I think it's kind of bloat after that. I think they were the best ones for me, and I've stuck with that. But this is such a super quick deck builder as well. So like, right, here's your 10 locations, right, so let's go. 5 cards, play this, 5 cards, play this, 5 cards, play this. It's super, super fast. No other deck builder is anywhere near this fast when it comes to what you do on your turn. Even Star Realms has trouble keeping up sometimes with this. Now granted, play this with a brand new player who's a bit analysis paralysis and you could be in trouble. But honestly, you play this with people who know what they're doing, and I don't mean like stupid experts. I don't want literally the guy to look at the 10 things in front of them and go, checkmate and 3 moves. It's like, I don't want that. But people who know the rules of the game and don't have to be explained everything once they've seen the cards, great. Still solid. I'm curious why it's climbed. I think it's just because others have kind of fallen, and I must admit, I do think about getting Dominion to the table again at some point because it is a solid game. I do like it. So yeah, if it's rising, not gonna complain. 75 for Dominion. My 74 has dropped, what have we got here? 18 places. Well, that's not too bad. I mean, I still enjoy this one. I think I've even played it. Certainly I've played it this year once or twice. Solid co-op tower defense style game, but it is hard. Oh my god, this one will beat you down relentlessly if it can help it. This is Ghost Stories, and I'm talking about Ghost Stories with the Asian monks and stuff like that, that Asian theme, not the new one, Last Bastion. I've not played that one. I hear it's good. It's pretty much the same game but with a fantasy theme, but why do I want generic fantasy when I could have like really cool Asian anime style looking thing? It's like, come on, one looks iota better than the other. But this one is just a really good solid co-op. You've got to work together. You can't be a Lone Ranger here. I like playing it solo every now and again because controlling 4 characters is pretty straightforward, and each one with a little special ability, and you're fighting off all these ghosts. They're coming in and they're trying to devour all the villagers, that like cause hauntings and that, and you've got to basically fight off all the ghosts with your key and various little abilities and that, and tokens and rolling dice until eventually Fu Manchu or whatever his name is, I forget his name, but you know, the guy, the big baddie comes out, and then you got to take him down, and he's got loads of different forms that he can take, so the boss battle is always very different. But it's a fairly, well, it's a simple premise. The rulebook tries to make it more complicated than it actually is, especially when you throw in the White Moon expansion, but I do really like that expansion. It adds really cool stuff like this deity that sort of protects you, but then you've also got these werewolf-style creatures that physically are trying to eat the villagers, you know, so for every good, there's always a bad. That's the way these things work. But yeah, just looks really cool on the table. It's beautiful. Can't remember who is the artist for this. Is it, no, Palomori's a designer. I'm trying to think, it was a Piero. I think Piero's the artist for this. And it's like, his stuff is so good. In here, it looks beautiful, but it is hard. Play this on the basic difficulty and never try any other difficulty. It's ridiculously hard, and this goes up to a difficulty level that's called Hell. Seriously? Hell?
We have such sights to show you.
No, Pinhead, you stay away. You've traumatized me enough as a kid. But cool, blimey, as like this one is hard, but hard in a good way. When I have won it several times, but when you do win it, it feels like you really earned that win. Not like, oh, you know, well, we got, you know, we might have got lucky now and again, but it's not one of those games where you feel like, oh yeah, we breezed through that. It's fine. No. Every win feels like a win. Like, oh, we're gonna chalk that one down in the record books. We need this one. So really solid. It's a great little one. I don't even know if you can get it anymore because I think it's just Last Bastion now. But if you see it on a Brin and Buy, I do recommend it because I think it looks better than the new version. Ghost Stories. My number 73 has dropped 10 places, and this one is the two-player, one of the most thematic two-player games in existence. It's also one of the biggest two-player games in existence. It is definitely one for the fans of the genre, of the IP that it's on about. Star Wars, of course, it's Star Wars Rebellion. I do not get this played very often. In fact, I'm pretty positive I've forgotten the rules to it at this point. But it's one of those games that I know that when I do get it to the table, I have a blast. This is Star Wars in a box. You basically play through all 3 of the movies in a sort of weird jumbled order, depending on what missions you're doing and what the Empire player is doing. And then throw in the expansion, you can throw in elements from the Rogue One movie, which was decent-ish. Rogue One, I'm a little bit like, on. Because it starts off pretty dullish and boring, but then the third act is just fantastic. So it all builds up to a brilliant crescendo. But with this game, you've got the two different players, asymmetrical play, which I love. The rebels are trying to do hit and run missions, trying to keep the rebel base hidden and get the resistance on their side, but all the while the Empire is hunting them down, searching for their base with a nice little Death Star coming by. So beep, 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 poof. Why does Kashyyyk get blown up so often in this as well? It's like Naboo and Kashyyyk seem to be the two planets I see blown up most often. Maybe there's some bad blood in there somewhere. But I love playing either player. If anything, I think I kind of prefer playing the Rebels more than the Empire, because I like having that hidden thing of you don't know where I am. Uh-oh, don't go over there, don't go over there, don't go, no! It's like, I love that kind of tension that comes with it. Plus, I want to be a Jedi, I don't want to be a Sith. So this one is just, it's a complex game. There's a lot going on. There's definitely enough to, like, it's definitely an advanced game. This is not casual by any means. And it's long. We're talking at least, like, sort of like 3-hour game here. But, oh, wow, is it so much fun. I love Star Wars. You know, granted, it's had a bit of a hit and miss relationship. Although, to be fair, I've been enjoying all the TV series stuff that's been coming out for it. But, yeah, thank you, Disney Plus. You got me through lockdown, seriously, with all the Clone Wars stuff. But, yeah, really solid game. I want to play it right now. I really do want to get that to the table again. Every time I talk about the game, I feel like I want to play it. It would be higher if it was just easier to get it to the table. I wonder if they could ever do like a midweight version of this, like a lighter version of Star Wars, like Star Wars Rebellion Light. Would there be a way of doing it? I wish you could do it solo as well. I'm not aware if somebody's done fan rules for it solo, but I don't really get how the game would work solo. Yeah, it'd be hard to see. As I say, still really enjoy it. Honestly, if somebody lives near me and wants to play it, let me know, because I would really like to get it to the table again and relearn those rules. Star Wars Rebellion, really solid at 73. Okay, let's get on to the debut. Yeah, you've been wondering, where's that debut, Luke? Where is it? Well, here it is now. Most people are probably going to hate me for this next comment, though. Everybody likes a certain game by this publisher, and the game is fine, the design is good, but I refuse to play a game or have a game that involves me teaching 4 separate games to people every time I have to play it. Seriously, it doesn't work from a practicality standpoint, and the game is okay. I'm not the biggest fan of Root. Good thing I raised the defenses before I decided to say that, but Fort is my 72. This is debuting on the list at 72. Really enjoying this. Again, funny enough, little deck building game. I love deck building, but this uses the same artwork. It's got that same kind of light thematic fun feel of kids building forts, but it's a really solid little deck builder. Simple rules, pretty easy premise. You basically play a card and then you boost it with cards of the same suit. There's a public action that other players can follow by discarding a similar card, and a private action that only you do. You either build your fort up, or you get cards in your lookout, or you get stuff in your backpack, you know, toys and pizza. I mean, it's kids. It's a very light-hearted theme. But I love the twist in this deck builder, and you've noticed this with me lately, like Runestones, Day of the Merchants, and a few other like deck builders where they've got a twist. I love it. This is the twist. Here, you only play one card from your hand. It goes into play and you boost it with whatever. The cards that you do not play from your hand go into your yard in front of your board, and when you recruit a card, you can choose from a central display or other people's yards. Yeah, so your cards, if you don't use them, could get snatched up by other players. Not in a vindictive way either, because if they're taking all your cards, then well, your deck's getting thinner, so all your really good cards that you are using are going to get played more often. But I love that concept. The idea, it works thematically as well, because the kids are like, yeah, I don't want to play with me anymore. I'm going, this guy sucks, fine. Well, you want to play with me? Yay! It's a, I don't know. That wasn't my childhood, trust me on that. You know, I'd be there sort of moping because no one wanted to play with me, and that kind of is the end, really. I had a bit of a rough childhood. But with this one, it's just, the theme works, the mechanics work, there are a few different paths to victory. Very quick game because it kind of ratchets up after a point. Doesn't take very long to teach, doesn't take very long to play, as I said. The artwork is divisive, but I think it suits this. And I can't wait to get the little Cats and Dogs mini expansion, although I seem to be one of the few people in the world that didn't get a review copy of it. Why is that, eh? I would have happily done a Beyond the Base Game review for this expansion had one come by, but as I say, definitely going to grab it when it comes out so I can have little cats and little dogs going around as well. It's a really solid little deck builder. Who knows, maybe it will even climb in the future once that expansion gets thrown in. Fort, debuting at 72. And to wrap this up, 71, where is it? Down there, right at the bottom. I like racing games as well, although to be fair, I haven't played many in recent years, but I do have a couple of choice racing games. And this one I would say, yeah, it's probably my favourite racing game that there is, although, I don't know, we'll see if I correct myself later on. And this is Snowtails. Snowtails, a very simple racing game. You are basically just dog sledding around this made-up track. And the idea is that you play cards in your hand. One for each dog, one for the brakes. You add up the values of the dogs, you subtract the value of the brakes, and that's your speed. And you move forward. The trick is though, is that if your dogs aren't perfectly aligned, so not the same value, you drift in those directions. So you're basically trying to control these two dogs while trying to go around hairpin turns and dodge trees, or collide through them. I find myself just literally colliding straight through the trees just to hope that my sled will hold in one piece by the end of the game. But the more you crash, the less cards you have, so the less options you have. But even when you have a full hand of cards, sometimes you just don't have the number you would love, and you gotta try and find a way to control these dogs. But I'd love to go dog sledding. Honestly, I love husky dogs. That would be one of the experiences I'd love to do, dog sledding. But it's just a really light, fun racing game. Nobody's taking it seriously. It's hilarious at times as people are careening out of control. Doesn't take too long. Granted, I don't really want to play this with 5 players. That's a little bit too long, although 4 is not too bad. 3 player I find is a good sweet spot, and I'll do 4. 2 is probably too little. I'm not even sure if it does 2 player, actually. Yeah, it does do 2, but honestly, I think you need 3 or 4. But it looks cool on the board. The artwork's good with all the snow, cardboard tiles that you build into a track. Take a suggested one or build your own. I don't know if it's easy to get hold of. I tend to see it on Brin and Buys more often, but it's a really cool game and it's so simple. The rules are so simple. There's no weird fiddliness to learn. You just have to get used to where the things are on the corners, maybe. Because it's hard to do racetracks on corners because obviously you're going a curve, but other than that, the game's pretty straightforward. And I still really enjoy bringing this out every now and again when gateway gamers want to play a racing game and I want to show them something a little bit more interesting than, Formula 1 racing cars. Because, spoiler alert, as you probably would have guessed by now, Downforce has fallen off the top 100. Still really enjoy the game and it is really simple, but it is just Formula 1 cars at the end of the day. This is dog sledding. Even though I have pimped up my Downforce with Mario Kart racing cars. that's really cool. But other than that, it's still basically Formula 1. Like I say, Snowtails doing solidly. It's dropped a little bit from 58, but big deal. It's still high in my 70s. Whew, there we go, yeah. Another batch of 10 games. I hope you've been enjoying these. The comments certainly seem to suggest that you are, but have no fear, I think you're going to enjoy the next 10 particularly, because the thing with the bottom 30 that I've been saying, apart from the bottom 10, there wasn't much change in the in the games that you've seen, because the first 10 I did had some new games, alright, that was a bit of an interesting list, but it was the 100 to 91. People only place so much reliance on those. This last 20 have all basically been games you've seen before, but just chopping and changing positions, which is still interesting, but not as interesting as the next 10, where we're going to get 3 new games. 3 new games are hitting that set of 10, and there's some interesting shift around in some of the games there. But yeah, once we get to those 10, I think there's going to be some interesting things to talk about when we get into the 60s. So yeah, I better get on with recording that one, I guess. So that's it for me on this episode of The Broken Meeple. Remember, if you like what you see, please remember to leave a like and a comment. It means the world to me to know that you appreciate the content and the effort that goes into it. There's also a Patreon page if you want to show even further support. Don't forget that the channel is sponsored and assisted by Zatu.co.uk. If any of the games on this list took your fancy, then by all means, search for them on the site, grab one and stick it on your shelf to fill one of those gaps. Until next time, you can check out some other videos on the channel, including the start of the top 100. I better face the right way for this one. But also, check out the last podcast episode I did down below. So until next time, remember as always, it's only a game. Bye for now, everyone. Love you all.